The fire crackled inside the circle of the Mescalero Apache camp. Night had draped itself across the mountains, the stars bright and unblinking as though they had gathered to witness what would be decided below. The people had assembled, the elders sitting in a half-moon at the front, their voices low and weighty with the importance of the moment. Koa sat among the younger warriors, his broad shoulders rigid, jaw set tight. He was known for his quiet strength, a man who carried himself with a gravity unusual for someone barely into his third decade of life. Many thought him destined for leadership one day, though Koa himself never spoke of it. He had not expected this night to change his life. He had thought it would be like any other gathering, listening to the old men's stories, the teachings, the chants that anchored their people in tradition. But when Elder Teklishim rose, staff in hand, and his eyes fell upon Koa, the warrior felt his heart shift. "Koa," the elder said, his voice both proud and commanding. "You are chosen." Murmurs rippled through the circle. Chosen for what? Koa lifted his chin but said nothing, the silence around him pressing against his chest like a tightening rope. The elder continued, "It is time you take a wife. Not for your own sake alone, but for the strength of our people. The woman has been chosen, as is our way. She will join her life with yours." A flicker of unease danced across Koa's face. He had always thought he would choose for himself when the time came. Yet he also knew the traditions. The wisdom of the council was not often questioned without consequence. Then they brought her forward. Nayeli. She was younger than Koa by a few years, her hair braided with care, dark eyes gleaming beneath the firelight. She moved with grace, each step deliberate, though the tension in her jaw betrayed her reluctance. She was known among the people for her sharp mind, a woman who often questioned things others accepted. Some admired her spirit, others whispered that she was too bold. When her gaze met Koa's across the fire, something unspoken passed between them. Not warmth, not affection, something more complicated. Koa inclined his head slightly in respect, but Nayeli did not mirror the gesture. Instead, her eyes lingered on him, steady, unreadable. The elder's staff struck the ground once. "It is decided," the fire popped and hissed. Around them, voices rose in both approval and quiet doubt. Some smiled, already whispering of the union to come. Others, like Nayeli's younger sister, watched with worried eyes. Koa felt the weight settle upon him. This was his path now. Whether he had wanted it or not, and Nayeli? She gave no word, no smile, no sign of acceptance. Only silence which cut sharper than a blade. The days following the elder's decision were filled with whispers. The camp was alive with speculation, curiosity, and even disapproval hidden behind polite smiles. The union of Koa and Nayeli had been sealed not by their choice, but by tradition. Koa spent much of his time at the river, his hands busy shaping arrow shafts, though his mind was far away. He had always been a man of few words, but even those close to him noticed the new silence pressing against him like an iron weight. He wasn't angry, at least not outwardly, but the uncertainty churned in his chest. He had seen Nayeli at a distance since that night by the fire. She carried herself as she always had, strong and proud, yet quieter now. When their paths crossed, she did not lower her gaze as some women might, nor did she look at him with affection. Instead, her eyes carried a storm he couldn't read. The preparations for the wedding were not long in coming. The women of the camp busied themselves with weaving garments, grinding herbs for offerings, and preparing food for the ceremony. The men constructed a shelter outside the main camp where Koa and Nayeli would share their first night. Koa's mother, Alawa, approached him one morning as he sat sharpening a blade. She was a stern woman, with lines carved deep into her face by both hardship and wisdom. "You are troubled," she said, kneeling beside him. Koa kept his eyes on the blade. "I did not expect this." "No man does," Alawa replied evenly, "but you are strong enough to bear it. The elders see in you a future you cannot yet imagine. You will not walk alone in it." Koa paused, his jaw tightening. "Does she even wish it?" "She has not spoken to me." Alawa's lips pressed into a thin line. "The heart of a woman is not always easy to read. You must be patient. Sometimes fire burns slow before it gives warmth. But Koa wasn't sure this fire would ever warm him. Nayeli, meanwhile, found herself surrounded by voices she wished to silence. Her younger sister, Apache, followed her constantly, speaking in hushed tones. You should be glad, Nayeli. Koa is strong, respected. Many women would... Nayeli spun around sharply. I did not ask for this. Apache flinched but held her ground. No, but perhaps it is meant for you. Perhaps you will... Do not speak of what you do not understand, Nayeli snapped. Her sister's eyes lowered, but Nayeli's chest heaved with a storm she could not calm. It wasn't that she disliked Koa. She respected him, his skill in the hunt, his quiet discipline. But respect was not love, and love was not something she believed could be demanded of her. Her heart ached with the weight of choice stolen. She had dreamed once of a different life, one where her voice guided her own path. Now the elder's decree had closed that path like a trap. The night before the wedding, the camp grew restless with celebration. Songs filled the air, drums pulsed beneath the stars, and yet both Koa and Nayeli felt alone. Koa stood at the edge of the circle, watching the dancers sway to the rhythm. He was approached by his friend, Toby, a fellow warrior. You stand like a shadow, Toby teased lightly. Koa allowed himself a faint smile. Perhaps I am one tonight. You fear her? Toby asked bluntly, Koa's brow furrowed. No, I do not fear women. Not women, Toby said, shaking his head. You fear what she carries inside her, that fire. It is not like others. Koa didn't answer, but his silence spoke louder than words. The day of the wedding arrived with the sunrise spilling gold across the desert. The ceremony was simple yet heavy with meaning. The elders led chants, smoke rose from burning sage, and the couple's hands were bound together with woven fiber, symbolizing the unity of two lives. Koa stood tall, his expression unreadable, though his heart beat heavily in his chest. Nayeli, standing beside him, was steady, her gaze focused forward, her lips pressed tight. When the binding was finished, the people cheered, though neither bride nor groom smiled. They were led to the small shelter at the edge of the camp. Inside, the fire burned low, casting flickering shadows on the walls. It was here they were to spend their first night together as husband and wife. The silence stretched thick between them. Koa finally spoke. If this union is unwanted, I will not force your hand. His voice was calm, respectful, yet firm. But I will not break from the path given. I will honor it. Nayeli's dark eyes lifted to his, sharp as a blade. Honor is not the same as love. You may give me respect, Koa, but do not ask me to give what I do not feel. Her words cut, though she spoke them without malice. They were not meant to wound, but they struck something deep in him all the same. For the first time, Koa's certainty faltered. He had thought patience and respect would be enough. But now, staring into her steady, unyielding gaze, he wondered if this union would only ever be a cage for them both. The days after the wedding felt like walking through a canyon with walls that never ended. Narrow, confining, yet impossible to escape. Koa and Nayeli lived together in the small shelter, but silence often hung between them heavier than stone. He would wake early, slipping out to hunt or work on weapons, his presence steady, yet distant. She would remain behind, tending the fire, weaving or wandering near the river. Their paths crossed daily, but rarely did their words. It wasn't anger that divided them. It was something subtler, an invisible line neither dared cross. One afternoon, Koa returned from the hunt with a deer slung across his shoulders. His movements were efficient, practiced, but his eyes flicked toward Nayeli as he entered the shelter. She was kneeling by the fire, grinding maize into meal. He laid the deer down and spoke. This will feed us for days. Nayeli did not look up immediately. Her hands continued their steady work, the rhythmic sound of stone against stone filling the silence. Finally, she replied, I can prepare it. Koa hesitated, then crouched beside her. I will help, she stilled, her dark lashes lowering. It was a small moment, but in it lived all the tension between them. Two people bound together, trying to move in step without colliding. When she finally looked at him, her gaze softened just slightly. Not warmth, not yet, but a crack in the wall she had built. At night, they often lay on opposite sides of the fire. Koa would close his eyes, listening to the sound of her breathing, wondering what thoughts kept her awake. He longed to ask, but something always stopped him. Respect, pride, fear. It was all tangled together, and Nayeli? She lay awake too, staring into the flickering shadows. She respected Koa perhaps more than she admitted aloud. His patience unnerved her. He did not demand, did not press, did not try to break her resistance. It made her wonder what truly lived behind his silence, but she also feared losing herself. To give in, to soften, would that mean surrendering the voice she had fought so hard to keep? A turning point came when danger stirred at the edges of the camp. One evening, word reached them that raiders had been spotted near the hunting trails. Warriors were called to guard the people, and Koa was among the first to rise. He strapped on his bow, slung his quiver over his shoulder, and prepared to leave. Before he stepped out, he caught Nayeli's gaze. She stood near the fire, her hands clenched at her sides. "You do not need to look at me so," Koa said quietly. "I do not wish you gone," she replied before she could stop herself. The words startled them both. She looked away quickly, but the echo of her confession lingered in the air between them. Koa's chest tightened. For the first time since their binding, he allowed himself a small, genuine smile. "Then I will return to you." The next days were tense. The warriors patrolled the borders, and the camp carried a hush of unease. Nayeli busied herself with work, but her eyes often strayed toward the horizon. When Koa finally returned, weary but unharmed, relief swept through her like a rushing river. She did not say it aloud, but that night, when he lay down beside her, she did not keep her distance. Her shoulder brushed his arm as they slept. A small thing, accidental perhaps, but Koa did not move away. Still, the cracks in their walls did not erase the deeper truth. Nayeli had not chosen this, and though Koa longed for her, he feared her heart would never be his. The elders watched quietly from afar, murmuring among themselves. Some believed the match was strong, others questioned whether Nayeli's fire would ever soften. Elder Taklisham, who had first spoken Koa's name, warned patience was key. "Storms can clear the sky," he said, "but they can also leave the land scarred." And so, even as warmth began to stir faintly between Koa and Nayeli, the shadow of that storm loomed ever closer. The desert had its own rhythm, days of silence broken by storms, stretches of peace shattered by danger. For Koa and Nayeli, their marriage mirrored that rhythm. Weeks passed since the raider threat, and though the danger had quieted, its shadow remained. Koa returned each evening with the dust of patrols clinging to his skin, while Nayeli grew more restless in their small shelter. Their closeness had begun to shift, almost imperceptibly. Where once there had been silence, now there were fragments of words. Where there had been distance, now there were shared tasks. They worked side by side without hostility, even with the beginnings of something gentler stirring in the space between them. But Nayeli's heart still waged war with itself. One evening, they sat by the fire as twilight bled into night. The sky was alive with stars, and the camp had grown quiet, children tucked into hides, warriors scattered in small circles of talk. Nayeli was weaving, her fingers moving with quick precision, while Koa polished his bow. For a long time, only the crackle of flames filled the air. Then Nayeli's voice broke the silence. "Do you ever feel trapped, Koa?" The question was sudden, but it carried a weight that made him still his hands. He looked at her, his brow furrowed. "Trapped?" "Yes," she said, her eyes fixed on the strands of fiber in her hands. "By what is expected. By what others decide. By the paths carved before your feet touch the ground." Koa's gaze softened. "I feel bound," he admitted, "but not trapped. To me, duty is not a chain. It is a stone I carry. Heavy, yes, but it grounds me." Nayeli shook her head, lips pressing thin. "And if the stone drags you under the river? What then?" He studied her in the firelight. Her voice was sharp, but beneath it he heard something else. Fear. Not of him, not of the Union, but of herself. Of losing the wild freedom she cherished. Koa set his bow aside. "You fear losing yourself?" Her eyes flicked to his, startled, as if he had spoken the truth she'd guarded so fiercely. For a moment, the air between them grew taut. Then she turned back to her weaving, her silence louder than words. Koa did not press her, but in his chest, he felt the ache of longing, not only for her love, but for her trust. That night, a storm rolled over the mountains. Lightning split the sky, and thunder growled across the desert floor. Rain lashed the shelter, and they sat inside together, watching the fire struggle against the wind. It was in that storm that something shifted. Nayeli shivered as water seeped through the cracks, and Koa pulled his blanket around her shoulders without a word. For the first time, she did not push it away. Their eyes met, the firelight flickering between them, and for a heartbeat, the walls between them cracked open. But still, Nayeli's heart whispered, "Not yet." Not fully, and Koa, though patient, felt the burn of desire and restraint tearing through him like twin flames. The storm passed, leaving the air cool and heavy with the scent of rain. Yet neither of them slept easily, for though their hands had almost touched, their hearts remained caught between duty and desire, and it was only a matter of time before that tension ignited into something neither could contain. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered inside both of them. The next days unfolded quietly, yet with an undercurrent of change. Nayeli moved through the camp with her usual grace, but her eyes often strayed toward Koa. Not openly, not enough for others to notice, just flickers of attention, stolen in moments when she thought him unaware. But Koa noticed. He noticed everything. One afternoon, he returned from scouting the trails. His quiver hung lighter than usual, only one arrow remaining. Dust clung to his hair, and his jaw was tense. Nayeli saw him enter the shelter, his movements slower than usual, and she frowned. "You are hurt," she said. He sat heavily near the fire and unfastened the leather at his side, revealing a shallow cut along his ribs. It was not grave, but it was fresh, the blood still bright. Nayeli's heart jumped. "Why did you not go to the healers?" Koa's voice was even. It was not worth their time. Her hands trembled as she reached for cloth and water. She knelt beside him, pressing the fabric to the wound. He did not flinch, though his eyes flicked down to her hands. For the first time since their union, she touched him not by accident, not in passing, but with care. "You call this nothing," she muttered, her voice sharp. "But you bleed." Koa's lips curved faintly. "And yet, I live." She pressed harder, and he drew in a breath. Their eyes met, and in that gaze lived a storm greater than the one that had battered their shelter nights before. Nayeli looked away quickly, binding the wound with tight precision. But her pulse betrayed her, racing wild beneath her calm exterior. When she finished, Koa caught her hand gently before she could pull away. His touch was firm, warm. "Nayeli," he said softly, her name a weight between them. Her breath caught. She wanted to say something sharp, something that would build the wall again, but she couldn't. Not when his eyes held her like that. Still, she pulled her hand free. "Rest," she whispered, turning from him. But when she lay down that night, her back to him, she could not sleep. She felt his presence close behind her, the fire's glow painting shadows across his skin, and her heart whispered things she did not yet dare admit. Days later, the camp prepared for a hunt. The warriors gathered before dawn, sharpening blades and testing bows. Koa was among them, his wound healed enough to fight. Nayeli watched from a distance, her stomach tight with unease. She wanted to stop him, to tell him not to go, but she said nothing. Her pride bound her tongue. Hours passed, and when the hunters returned, the camp erupted in celebration. They had brought back more than enough to feed the people, and yet Nayeli searched only for one face. When she saw Koa among the hunters, unharmed, relief flooded her so strong it left her weak. She hid it, as always, but that night when they sat by the fire, she spoke words she hadn't intended. "I was glad when I saw you return." Koa's hand stilled on the bowstring he had been tightening. Slowly, he turned to her. "You were?" Her throat tightened. She faltered, then forced the words. "Yes, something passed between them then, something neither could deny." The firelight seemed brighter, the night around them darker, the space between them charged like air before lightning. Koa leaned closer, his voice low. "Then perhaps the stone I carry is not mine alone." Her breath shivered, but she did not move away. Not this time. The silence that followed was not heavy like before. It was alive, sparking, dangerous. A silence that promised something inevitable, something waiting just beyond the line they both still hesitated to cross. The slow burn had become a fire. And though neither would say it aloud, both knew. The storm was only beginning. The camp was alive with late summer heat. Days stretched long beneath the desert sun, and nights brought little relief. The air itself seemed charged, as though waiting for something to break. Koa and Nayeli lived within that same charge. Their days moved in rhythm: work, hunt, fire, silence. But beneath each ordinary act, there was a pull, an invisible thread tightening between them. Every glance was sharper. Every brush of hands lingered too long. The slow burn of their union had grown into a flame threatening to consume them both. One evening, as the camp gathered in celebration after a successful hunt, Koa and Nayeli found themselves apart from the others. Music drifted from the circle, drums, rattles, the sound of voices rising, but neither joined in. Nayeli walked toward the river, her steps quiet on the packed earth. She carried no basket, no task, only the need for space. The water shimmered in the starlight, cool and dark, a mirror for the restless storm in her chest. She did not hear Koa follow, but she felt him. His presence was like gravity, heavy and certain. "You walk alone," he said when he reached her. Her jaw tightened. "Do you follow me now?" He stopped a few paces away, his voice even. "Not to bind you, only to walk beside you if you will have it." Nayeli turned, the starlight catching her eyes. "And if I will not?" Koa's gaze held steady. "Then I will stand here until the dawn, but I will not leave." The defiance in her chest clashed with something softer, something she had fought to ignore. His patience, his steadiness, it was a force she could not push away, no matter how she tried. "Why do you not demand?" she asked suddenly. "You are strong. You could take what you want. That is what men do." Koa's expression darkened, not with anger, but with hurt. "That is not what I am." His words struck her. She had expected many things from him: command, insistence, perhaps even bitterness. But never this: restraint, even when he burned. She looked back at the water, her voice quieter. "Then what do you want, Koa?" He stepped closer, the space between them shrinking to only a breath. "I want you," he said simply. "Not as a duty, not as the elder's choice. I want you, but I will not take what you do not give." Her heart pounded, fierce and wild. She wanted to scoff, to push him away with sharp words, but the truth slipped out instead. "And if I have nothing to give?" Koa's eyes softened. "Then I will still walk beside you, until the day you choose to send me away." The air between them thickened. Nayeli's throat tightened with words unsaid, with the fire she had tried so long to smother. Her fingers curled at her sides, aching to reach for him, but pride, fear, and longing clashed within her, leaving her trembling. She turned abruptly and walked back toward the camp. But that night, when they lay near the fire, she did not sleep at the farthest edge of the shelter. Instead, her shoulder brushed his arm, and she did not pull away. Koa closed his eyes, holding still as stone, but inside, the fire threatened to break him apart. The next day, the camp prepared for another journey. They would move to higher ground for the season, a ritual as natural as breathing. Families packed their hides, baskets, and tools, readying for the trail. Nayeli worked alongside the women, her hands busy but her thoughts tangled. Every word from Koa echoed in her mind. "I want you." Not as duty. It should have frightened her, but instead it left her restless, as though her skin could no longer hold her. When night came and the camp settled for rest, she found herself sitting beside the fire, staring at him. Koa met her gaze across the flames, his face unreadable but his eyes lit with something she had no name for. Her chest tightened, and for the first time since the binding, she did not look away. Something had shifted. The walls between them were no longer whole. The storm that had hovered for weeks was finally about to break. The fire in the center of the lodge burned low, its glow painting the walls in restless shades of amber and shadow. Outside, the celebration had long ended. The voices of the people drifted away one by one, replaced by the quiet murmur of the night wind through the mesquite. Koa sat cross-legged, silent, his strong shoulders taut with a tension that even the fire could not soften. Across from him, Ayana sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, her face unreadable. They had been married that day, joined in the eyes of the people, in the will of the elders, and under the gaze of the mountain spirits. And yet, in this moment, there was no warmth between them. For weeks he had tried to understand her, to read past the calmness of her voice, to decipher the guarded look in her eyes. He had thought that marriage, though sudden and arranged, would eventually create a bond. He believed that time and patience would draw her closer, but Ayana finally spoke, and her words cut deeper than any blade. I did not want this. Her voice was low, but steady, as if she had rehearsed it 1,000 times in her mind. I did not choose you, and no vow made by the elders can force my heart to bend. Koa's breath caught. He stared into the fire because he could not bring himself to meet her eyes. The crackle of burning wood sounded suddenly too loud in the silence. You think me ungrateful, she continued, softer now, though her words still struck like arrows. But I will not lie to you. To walk beside you is not my desire. My spirit is not here. It belongs to someone else, somewhere else. Her confession landed heavy. Koa had fought in battles, had faced storms and famine, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. He had never been a man of many words, yet now silence was all he had. The weight of her honesty was unbearable, a truth he could neither fight nor escape. The fire popped, sending sparks upward. He finally turned his gaze toward her, and for a moment, his dark eyes softened, as though searching for something, any trace of hope, any sign that her words were not final. But Ayana's face remained unyielding. The night stretched long. Neither moved. The air between them felt colder than the desert wind outside. Koa's spirit broke quietly, not with tears or anger, but with the hollow ache of knowing that love, no matter how patient, could not be forced. Still, as dawn approached and the first light touched the horizon, he whispered one promise to himself. He would not give up. Not yet. Even if her heart belonged elsewhere, he would find a way to stand strong. For himself, for her, for the life the spirits had entwined, whether they wished it or not.